Hello everybody and welcome back to Iceland. Now we have been touring the country in a kind of systematic way where we left off in our last flight in Selfoss. Today we are taking a detour to the east of Selfoss and specifically to a volcano under the glacier Vatnajökull, which has shown signs in the last day of waking up. In front of us you will see a map of the country, and specifically a map from the Icelandic Met Office website, and you can see on the right there's some of the biggest earthquakes during the last 48 hours, and one that's just happened within the last hour by the look of it, magnitude 3.5 and 3.4 and 3.1, specifically 3 earthquakes there, with a specialist remark here saying the earthquake swarm at Bárðarbunga volcano continues. Several hundred earthquakes have been detected since 3 AM yesterday morning, and since midnight today most events cluster in two areas, east of Bárðarbunga and around Kistafell. The strongest events during the night were an M3.4 at 2:52 AM and an M3.5 at 6:21 AM southeast of Kistafell. So that's the latest update, it looks like, within the last few minutes or so. But specifically, this has been going on since around 3 AM on Saturday. The first activity was noted. So let's just go and take a quick look at the map of Vatnajökull itself. This is a close-up view of the area in question. And since 3 AM on Saturday local time, around here on the bottom chart, a swarm of activity started, a swarm of earthquakes began, which has continued through all the course of Saturday, all through Saturday night, and is continuing on now. The red dots indicating the most recent events, and the orange dots the ones preceding that, and so on backwards, yellow and blue. And you can see the activity is not letting up. I mean, this is what is called a swarm of earthquakes, and indicates some activity is going on beneath the volcano. And if you want to see some interesting other areas to look at, is the green stars here, which indicates some earthquake activity above magnitude 3, of which there have been 4 in the last 24 hours or so. And up until yesterday evening Iceland time, local time, there'd been around 300 earthquakes, which was a magnitude above what they'd experienced recently, actually, or in a previous episode a few years ago, and that was significantly more than they'd had previously. And now I believe we can look to see how many earthquakes have happened locally since. We're now up to a total of 717 earthquakes, some of those obviously quite low, below magnitude 1, some of those most between magnitude 1 and 2, and some above that as well. But that's a significant number of earthquakes, and is indicating some activity there beneath the glacier and beneath the volcano specifically. So you can see the depth of the earthquakes as well here. So these are indicating depths anywhere from sort of 11 kilometers up to less than a kilometer beneath the surface, and that means a variety of things which we'll touch on shortly. So going back to the map, I thought it would be quite good for us to have a detour flight today, a pretend flight if you like, whereby we are taking a group of geologists or scientists for a survey flight in the dawn, Sunday dawn morning light, to go and see whether there is anything visibly happening on the glacier itself, whether there is indications of flooding, whether there is indications of an eruption actually happening and breaking through the ice cap. So the idea today is we'll do a quick survey flight of the volcano area and glacier area, and I'm sure they will probably be doing this right as we speak in real life. And we will be taking, if I bring up a map of Google Maps, we'll be starting our flight around here on the map, which is next to a volcano, EZDok, and we'll be taking a southwesterly course down past Askja volcano lake here, volcanic crater, southwesterly course down here, and going and checking out specifically Bárðarbunga here, and flying a circuit around to see whether we can see anything happening. So that is the plan for today, and is a detour from where we were previously, but hopefully should be quite an interesting flight for us to look at. So here we are in the simulator prepared 2.3, the latest update, which includes some improvements to make things like cloud shadows work well, and I'll touch on them in a later video. But for now we're in a Beechcraft B1900D from Carenado, and we've probably got a team of about 8 scientists on board. We've got taken off from Ailstaðir to our northeast, and we've flown down southwest towards Vatnajökull, and off the wingtip to the right there you can see EZDok, the volcano, which we'll probably talk about in another video anyway. And here we are heading towards Vatnajökull, which you can see on the horizon, dominating our view, and we're actually heading to the right-hand tip of Vatnajökull, which is where Bárðarbunga, the volcano, is located and where the activity has been occurring. In fact, all the way to our left here, from the glacier all the way back to Heiðarbreið, there's been quite a lot of activity in recent months, which could all be linked, we don't know. Heading inside, we can check out our altitude, which is around 7,500 feet. And we can look at our speed, which is around 200 knots, which we'll try and keep around this level for now. Bárðarbunga is actually one of the taller mountains in Iceland, if not the second tallest, I believe. So it's good to keep a bit of height as we fly around it and look around the area of interest that we're looking into. So we'll try and keep at this level. And then back outside, we can see in front of our nose we're coming up to the crater lake and volcano of Askja. Askja is actually a very large volcano. That crater lake is not the only crater. In fact, I believe everything we're flying over now is part of Askja, a rather large volcano that last erupted in the 1800s, I believe, and that was when the lake itself formed. And it is quite a popular destination, certainly during the summer months when people can come down to the lake, or travel to the lake I should say, to hike around it and hike into this, which is part of the highlands up here. So just off there, off the left wingtip, as we bounce through a little bit of turbulence there, but off the left wingtip just in front you can see Askja's crater lake, and up in the distance Vatnajökull in the background. And just off on the left side of the lake, crater lake, is the geothermal explosion crater, I believe it's called, of Viti, which was formed during a geothermal explosion at some point, I'm not sure when. That's off to the left of the lake just there. And actually in the last 2 weeks Askja itself has experienced some activity, unusual activity, more to do with meltwater, but just where I'm pointing now, there was a landslide into the lake, huge rock slide, and it caused a tsunami across which went into Viti on the other side. Thankfully it happened late at night when no one was around, but it's quite common to have tourists around this time of year, so it was pure luck that did not cause a bigger issue. And it was one of the biggest landslides in recorded history, I believe. Huge amounts of rock fell down, partly because of meltwater, partly because of geothermal activity, they reckon, partly because of landslips in an active area in a newer caldera like this, apparently. So that happened literally a couple of weeks ago. And just behind us you can see the sun coming up as we leave Askja behind, and the region all below us and behind Askja back to Heiðarbreið is so active geothermally and volcanic wise, and with earthquakes at the moment that it's no surprise that more stuff is probably happening. So we'll continue towards Bárðarbunga in front of us. So as we fly closer to the volcano itself, it's probably a good time to tell you a bit more about Bárðarbunga specifically. It's a stratovolcano under ice, and the ice here being Vatnajökull, and it's the second highest mountain in Iceland. The highest mountain is another volcano in the south of Vatnajökull, which we fly past in another video. Bárðarbunga is part of Iceland's largest volcanic system, which stretches 120 miles long by 16 miles wide, so a huge system. And the crater of Bárðarbunga is 6 miles wide itself and about 700 meters deep, but it's hard to see that because it's totally covered in the ice cap. There is a possible link between Bárðarbunga and also Grímsvötn, which is a very active volcano just slightly to the south and east, I believe, of Bárðarbunga, whereby the last time activity occurred and an earthquake in, I think it was 96, and certainly in 2011 there was more activity. An earthquake at Bárðarbunga was followed by an eruption at Grímsvötn. In the last 7 years there's been a lot more activity in Bárðarbunga and the region in general. Most recently, I think in April it was, this year, there was a swarm of 200 earthquakes closer to Heiðarbreið where we started this flight. And in 2011, as I've mentioned before, a series of earthquakes caused Grimsvötn to erupt and have a small eruption through the ice cap. It wasn't quite as well publicised as the larger F.L.Y eruption the year before, but it's certainly linked to the whole volcanic system of Bárðarbunga. But Bárðarbunga itself activity has seen it coming and going in the last few years, and now that is culminating in this activity over the last day, which is leading many to believe that something is finally going to happen there. Historically, Bárðarbunga erupts every 200 to 600 years in a major eruption, and an eruption 8,500 years ago was responsible for producing 21 cubic kilometres of lava, possibly up to 30 cubic kilometres of lava, which to this day is still the largest known eruption of its type anywhere in the world. And that is what makes this volcano potentially so dangerous, I suppose, and makes monitoring it so important, and why the activity over the last day or so is possibly so worrying for people. So heading back inside just briefly, we'll just make sure we're maintaining our altitude and the correct sort of speeds as well, which we seem to be doing okay. We've perhaps dropped a little bit, but it's nothing we can't adjust. So we'll just check things out from inside the cockpit. Looking out to the left now, over the glacier where the activity has been happening, sort of more to the front of the aircraft slightly, and just over the glacier and the ice there. One of the great things you can notice there, if you look at the window frame, on the edge of the window, some of the shadows from the clouds in this version of the simulator, which looks great. Just as a slight aside, the weather today isn't real weather, it's actually dreadful weather up there, so I'm not sure if anyone is flying around in it, but I chose to have fair weather on today, and it looks quite nice out there. So just taking a slight turn to the right now, so we can come round and do a circuit. Bárðarbunga, the volcano itself, is just here in front of us and off to our left, this area of ice rising up. Having a look, or our first look over the volcano itself to see if we can see an indication of activity occurring. Obviously that will not be simulated in this simulator, but I guess the things that the scientists in the back would be looking for are things like the ice cracking, depressions in the ice caused by heat from underneath. An ash cloud would be a pretty obvious sign, and more obviously below us in fact, where the different tributaries from the rivers and the water flow from underneath the glacier come out. They'll be looking for indications of flooding and more water discharge than normal. This whole area that we're looking at here, this raised ice level, is the whole volcano. It shows you the scale of things. And the activity monitoring stations and GPS stations around the volcano in recent weeks has been seeing an uplift underneath of the ground, indicating things are rising around Bárðarbunga, which again is adding weight to the fact it might be about to erupt. Back inside, we'll just check everything is okay with the altitude and speed, which it is. Take a left turn, have a quick pilot's eye view of the volcano as they would be able to see it from the cockpit of any aircraft flying over as we circle the crater. Now we're over the ice cap proper, taking a closer look at whether we can see any signs of activity, circling to the left and round the crater edge. Just see the sun coming up, making it possible for us to see things. Hopefully we'll clear the clouds soon and we'll be caught up in there above the volcano. Just looking down, there's some cracks on the ice, and whether they could be part of the activity we've been looking at, who knows, but there's certainly some cracks down there according to this scenery. Seems to be little evidence of actual activity, certainly no giant ash cloud coming out of the ice cap at this time. Everything looks quite calm. It's hard to tell whether or not things are like this currently. I think there's quite heavy cloud cover at the moment over the glacier, so whether or not they'll be able to see anything I don't know, but I would imagine the seismic activity is giving them some indication of whether the eruption has started or whether things are quieting down again. Well, all looks relatively calm at the moment, so we'll take one final look out the left side over our wing, just double check nothing's coming up, give the scientists their view. Now it looks like it is still sleeping, so I'm sure they'll be keeping an eye on things closely over the coming days. Well, with no sign of the volcano awakening this morning on our flight, we'll head back towards base, I think. And we'll end that video there. I hope you enjoyed the slight detour we've taken today, and who knows what's going to happen in real life. We're certainly keeping an eye on the news, and I'll update you as to whether or not anything happens in the coming days or weeks with Bárðarbunga in real life. But I hope you enjoyed this slight change, and we'll be back to part 3 of the tour of Iceland very soon.